Hello, good morning, and thank you for having us here. It's such an honor. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that is very close to your hearts here in Thailand, Industry 4.0. Now, a lot of you have probably heard this term, but maybe aren't aware of the context. Well, Industry 4.0 is a terminology that was first used in a German government memo talking about the future of manufacturing, and later expounded on by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum in his book, Industry Revolution 4.0. And what it refers to is the fourth paradigm of the industrial revolution. Sorry, let's try that again. Industrial revolution, yeah. So the first paradigm happened in the late 18th century with the invention of the steam engine, which brought about mechanization. The second paradigm was in the late 19th century with the inclusion of electricity and, of course, the assembly line. Being from Detroit, I'm very familiar with the assembly line. And then the third paradigm happened in the late 20th century with the invention of computers, personal computers, global communication, and, of course, automation. Now, this fourth paradigm of innovation is called the merging of the digital, the physical, and the biological. Now, what that means is that all four of these paradigms make up something called the Industrial Revolution, and each one of these steps has accelerated the pace of change as well as amplified human capabilities. Industry 4.0 is no different, except that it will radically enhance human labor and cognition to a degree we have not seen since Industry 1.0. That's the size of the impact this is going to have on our world. It provides increased agility in the rapidly accelerating pace of change that we're seeing as a result of Moore's law. And it is estimated to have somewhere between $9.8 and $19.3 trillion impact on the world economy by the year 2025. Now, that's a wide range, but either end of it is nothing trivial. The technologies that are driving this are three different categories. The first category is data and analytics. You've heard a little bit about the Internet of Everything, as well as the fact that our world in general is starting to dematerialize. As the world dematerializes and turns into data, it enters that doubling curve that Jonathan showed you, that exponential curve. Okay, and so that side of the data, that amount of data is finally being made sense of by things like machine learning and AI, especially in this manufacturing context. Now that, of course, leads to advanced production methods that you're going to hear about over the next couple days. Everything from digital manufacturing to lights-out type of factories, where we can leave the factory to run for months on end with very to little human intervention into that space. Of course, when we do have humans involved in manufacturing, and trust me, there are going to be many, many, many human jobs being created. These types of jobs are going to be done by augmented humans. We will be wearing augmented and virtual realities, as Aaron's going to tell you about, as well as exoskeletons like the one you've seen out here, as well as cobots, robots that we can collaborate with in real time. All of that describes an entirely new way of thinking about industry, and it will have far-reaching implications, some of which we are already starting to feel. To begin with, 3 out of 5 jobs are at risk of automation. Now, by that, I don't mean to say that 3 jobs in every 5 are going to disappear. But what I do mean is that of those 3 jobs, 1 or 2 are going to be entirely automated, while the other will be about 30% automated. And it really doesn't matter whether you are a blue-collar worker or an informational worker, this is the impact it will have on jobs. Now, the people that are going to be most affected are women and low-skilled, low-wage workers, right? So those people that are just starting to get their footing into manufacturing. The other impact that is going to be quite significant is around reshoring. We heard the Deputy Prime Minister talk about the impact that tariffs will have on this global supply chain, this global manufacturing economy. But that's not the only thing, because with the advent of these autonomous factories that can operate without many humans involved, a lot of these large economies, such as the US and Germany, are starting to reshore manufacturing, putting it back next to their domestic markets so that they can manufacture things like clothing, home goods, as well as appliances close to home and save on the time and costs of international manufacturing supply chains. Now, this is going to have a massive impact on countries that are moving from poverty into that more secure economy, such as your own. And being myself from poverty, I can tell you that my family, the way that we moved from poverty into the middle class was entirely through manufacturing jobs. Those jobs provided income to my parents' generation that enabled my generation to be able to go to higher level education, to get those more solid jobs, so that our children can move even farther beyond where we have moved. Now, the minute that you remove those manufacturing jobs, what happens is that entire system slides back into poverty. And so this is a very scary thing that we have to be willing to take risks and try to tackle in a meaningful sort of way. Because the truth of the matter is, you can't stop it. It's not like we can run out and say, no more Industry 4.0, we're done with that. You can't do that anymore, right? We can't ban it. It's going to happen whether we want it to or not. And so instead, what we have to think about is, what are we going to do to leverage this new Industry 4.0 to really become the disruptors in the system? Now, most innovations in this world, most innovations by corporations, are what Christensen calls sustaining innovation. What that means is that whether it's radical or incremental, the innovations that we develop tend to help us to improve our price performance for existing customers in our existing marketplace, right? So then, when we want to do innovation, what we tend to do is we look at what our customers are asking for, and we try to make incremental or radical improvements so that we can continue or accelerate our dominance within that marketplace. That type of innovation works great. It's how we have these global leaders that continue to build their market dominance until something changes. And as you heard earlier, the pace of change is rapidly accelerating. And over the next century, it's not going to feel like 100 years of innovation. It's going to feel more like 20,000 years worth of change, which, as you know from Jonathan, that doesn't compute in our linear thinking minds. Now, corporations are built to withstand change happening outside. We build our corporations to help us to really maintain performance and to continually improve profits and to continually improve the things that we offer to our customers. In fact, we shape our companies specifically to maintain the systems that we built our company around. Most of the different silos within your organization or within your industry match the types of products and services that you are creating. And in addition to that, they come from wherever you started from. And as you build bigger and bigger, you create more and more jobs within your organization that cost more and more money for the organization to maintain. Incumbents, in fact, have completely built their companies on the methodologies that help them to succeed in Industry 2.0 and 3.0. In fact, we create different types of rubrics and systems to allow us to vet one idea against another to ensure that we are eliminating those wild and crazy ideas. These usually come out in the way of PowerPoints. And we put the ideas into the PowerPoint, and it follows a specific formula so that our executives can compare one idea to another and to decide which one is going to move forward. That means that not only do ideas that don't measure up to the existing marketplace get discarded, it also means that the wild and crazy ideas that fall outside of that system have no way to be presented and compared because they don't fit within the PowerPoint template that we use to vet our ideas. And that is a really big problem. Because disruptive ideas fail all the traditional metrics that you are using and relying on to ensure success within your industry. Do they help us to maintain our margins? Nope. Are they going to make our customers happy? No. Are they going to improve our performance? Are we going to beat our competitors? Nope. You're not going to do any of that. Disruptive ideas create entirely new marketplaces because they solve radically different problems than the incumbents have tried to do for entirely new groups of people. So when we measure these ideas against the ideas that work for sustaining, they fail every time. Here's a great thought experiment. I'm going to offer you, not really, okay? I'm going to offer you two briefcases. In one briefcase, I'm going to offer you a penny that's going to double every day for a month. In the other one, I'm going to offer you $1 million US. Now that we are all enlightened and we understand exponential thinking so well, we are clearly going to pick the penny example, yeah? And so we're going to start out with that penny. And our bosses are going to look at us like we're the crazy people in the room because we didn't pick the $1 million. And then come day 15, we're going to be feeling all proud of ourselves when we're making $163. But again, our bosses are going to be looking at us saying, but he made $1 million, and you're only making $163. In addition to that, the price of what you're trying to develop is way more expensive than the traditional tried and true innovation that your colleague is trying to do. And to make it worse, you're not sure it's going to perform in the marketplace because you don't even know what marketplace you're working on. Now, this is when ideas get killed. This is the point where you hear, we tried it, it didn't work, let's kill it. Yeah? And we do it all the time. But if we had held on, if we had trusted that that was just the disappointment moment in that exponential curve of that technology, and held on for 12 more days, we would be beating our colleague by $0.3 million. And if we hold on just 3 more days, we're going to be making $10.7 million compared to our colleagues' $1 million. And this is exactly how disruption happens, is because we reach that 15-day point and we say, this is a terrible idea, let's kill it now, right? The day before something comes and changes the world, it's laughed at, it's ridiculed, it's thought of as a crazy, crazy idea. Because when we hear a novel idea that doesn't fit our linear pattern, our immediate knee-jerk reaction is to say, no. It happened to Thomas Edison and the light bulb. When he worked on this, people were like, who would ever want a light bulb? When Florence Parapat went around trying to sell her refrigerator, first of all, she was laughed out of the room for how dare she be female. And secondly, who in the world would want an electric device in the kitchen? Now we can't imagine life without these things. Disruptors are not going to come from Industry 2.0 and 3.0. Those companies have silos and organizations that are really big and heavy, and they're incredibly tied to what existed before. Industry 4.0, the disruptors that come with Industry 4.0 are going to build native in this era. They're going to come from these types of technologies and not trying to retrofit into them. So, in order to be competitive in this world, you have to be willing to shift your perspective, to start to think about the world from a different angle, from different possibilities, solving entirely different problems. And in order to do that, you cannot ask your customers what they need. You cannot say, hey, I want to be your vendor from now on. What should I do for you? Because they can't tell you. They don't know. They're about to be disrupted. You have to be willing to break the old model that doesn't serve you in order to get to a new one. Instead, you have to ask yourself, what does Industry 4.0 enable you to do that would never be possible before? You have to be willing to be completely irrational. Now, when we talk about Industry 4.0, there's a number of opportunities that come with it. The first is that increased agility that I talked about. The ability to rapidly adapt to changing materials, changing markets, changing technologies. Second is that it increases productivity per individual, because it's not just one individual working alone. Those augmented humans, these smart factories, allow us to amplify any person's productivity radically, something that here in Thailand is really essential to move forward. Third is that it democratizes innovation. Now, I'm a small business owner, and I will tell you that one of the biggest hurdles that I have is capital. It takes a lot of money to reach scale, to do all the things that I want to do. But if I have an automated HR department and an automated accounting department, and I have a manufacturing solution that I can just flip a switch and turn on, suddenly I need a lot less capital to be able to compete on a global stage. And so that is the key, is these small and medium enterprises, they need to be able to have access to these technologies to be able to rapidly scale and deliver world-class opportunities. And of course, the last opportunity is new human jobs. Now, I did tell you that 3 out of 5 jobs are about to be automated. But that doesn't mean we're going to lose jobs. What that means is that those jobs may go away, but entirely new jobs are going to be created. In fact, every time we've had a revolution in the Industrial Revolution, what we've seen is that new jobs are created, new opportunities, and new ways of life, right? Think, for example, today. Today we have cybersecurity experts. That job didn't even exist 10 years ago. And today, it's one of the most highly paid, most sought-after jobs in the entire world. So with the loss of some jobs, we gain other jobs. And in doing so, we create an unfortunate skill gap, because we have jobs that are starting to disappear, and we have people aging out, people that are retiring with all that skill set. And we're generating entirely new jobs, like the cybersecurity expert or the mechanic that's working on the smart factories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so by 2028, we are estimated to have a skill gap of around 2.4 million unfilled jobs. So it's not that we're going to have a lack of jobs, it's that we need to develop skills to fulfill the jobs. So here are my recommendations for what to do about Industry 4.0. Now, first things first, you have to have the government on board. And based on what I heard this morning from your Deputy Prime Minister, it sounds like you have some pretty determined folks. Good for you, because governments that actively involve themselves are most likely to succeed in this environment. You have to be willing to leverage AI and automation in the public sector to allow easier civic engagement, allow people to access services more rapidly without the bureaucracy that has traditionally slowed us down. and also without any loss in the quality of the services. Next, you need that ubiquitous high-speed internet. Now, Thailand has improved their reach of 4G by 367%. Great. But you're still suffering from digital illiteracy. So it's not enough that we just give these folks access to these technologies, right? The internet is the key to getting into that e-commerce that is so essential to being participant in Industry 4.0. It allows people to move from a very isolated experience to participating in the global economy and accessing things like the gig economy, right? But they have to be willing, they have to know how to leverage it to do that. And that's a big problem spot for you. The next is to be able to mobilize and allocate finance for a better future. You have to be able to fund those startups that are working on these Industry 4.0 technologies in order for your country as a whole to raise up its skill set and participate in this Industry 4.0. Speaking of developing skill sets, education is incredibly key to this future. First things first, you have to invest heavily in high-quality education that's accessible to all, not just for people who can afford it, but everybody. You need lifelong learners. The skills that are going to continually come up and change thanks to this accelerating pace of change, you have to be able to be learning not only as a child, but as an adult. In the middle of your career, at the end of your career, you have to enable that type of lifelong learning to happen. This means that you're going to have to be highly adaptable, be able to change constantly, right? Unlike Industry 2.0 and 3.0, where you had a job and you kept it for 50 years, now we're talking about jobs that change very rapidly, very quickly, and you have to be willing and able to adapt to them. The other thing is around social skills and leadership. Right? And it's not enough just to teach STEM, not just to teach the engineering things. You have to build into your system creativity. You have to teach arts and humanities along with the engineering, because it's the creative problem identification as well as creative problem solving that will help you to accelerate beyond your neighbors and move forward into this world. But that's not enough. You also have to have hands-on learning, vocational training, to enable people to really know how to invest and collaborate with these machines and all of this technology that's coming out. You can't just sit back and let it do. You have to actively be participant with it, collaborate with it to build this. Now, there's one way that I've heard of that has been really remarkable, and that is in Chicago in the US, there's a company called Accenture, maybe you've heard of them, and what they do is they have an apprentice program, and this is how it works. They promise employees that if they automate themselves out of a job, Accenture will retrain them for a better job. They will upskill them. And the way they do that is through an apprenticeship program. So if you are, say, a blue-collar worker who has automated yourself out of a job, they promise you to get a better job and to allow you to shadow somebody who does that job already so that you can learn how to do that much more rapidly than, say, going back and getting a university degree. Okay? Then, of course, just as Accenture is participating, you need industry to be very involved in all of this. You need to eliminate traditional hierarchies. And I know this is very difficult. But the CEO and the blue-collar worker have to collaborate in real time in order to survive this transition to Industry 4.0. It can't be directed from the top down. It has to come from the bottom up as well as from the top. So we need a collaboration across hierarchies. In addition, just like Cisco is talking about, you have to be able to support your downstream suppliers in order to ensure that you're having the technologies and the material sciences necessary to really perform at these high levels. You also need to have clear business plans. One of the biggest challenges industry has in moving into Industry 4.0 is that they don't quite understand. They don't have clear business plans of how they do it. They just say, oh, I'm going to take this AI and I'm going to apply it. And they think that's going to keep them safe, but that's not true. You have to have a clear idea of how you're going to leverage that technology to do something else in order to really be taking advantage of these new technologies and opportunities. And then, of course, you have to remove those silos that you have built over generations to help you to perform in Industry 2.0 and 3.0 are no longer going to serve you. You have to get rid of them entirely, not just for communication and collaboration, but also for your data, so that you can have a free lake of data across your entire organization so that that analytic software can really have an impact and do something with it. Now, Industry 4.0 promises to be as impactful as Industry 1.0. The question is, how are you going to shape your future using this? And how dedicated are you to participating in this new global economy that's going to be brought about by Industry 4.0? Thank you.